World Business Academy has set up an actual Elisabet Sahtouris chair in living economics. And we are very, very happy and honored to have her here at Boom to speak and share all of her wisdom with us as one of our elders. Together with her, we will discover the secret of living a better future right here, right now. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Elisabet Sahtouris, Evolution Revolution.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening for those of you who think 7 o'clock is evening. Are we all in an attitude of gratitude at being here? I am, because I rarely get an opportunity to talk to people from so many different countries around this beautiful planet. So I thank you for all coming, and for all the many people who did the amazing work to organize an event for 40,000 people from all over the planet that goes easily and smoothly, and wow! Let's give them a hand. It's so amazing. I'm really going to remember this one for the rest of my life, which isn't going to be too much longer because I'm looking forward to graduation. I'm only 5 months away from my 80th year on this planet, so take me seriously. I'm still having fun because we're supposed to be having fun on this planet. We really are. We really are. So here we are. This is what we're doing this year, right? We're paying homage to Mother Nature and looking into the mysteries of nature. So we humans have always been storytellers, right? From the beginning, we've been storytellers. And we create our societies, our realities, from our stories of how things are. That's all we can do, is make our reality as our experience. That's my definition of reality. And my informally adopted son in the Peruvian Andes, a Quechua, technically the Runacuna people, in their culture, reality is everyone's experience. And you share it. And if your experience is different from my experience, which of course it is, because no two people can have exactly the same experience, in their culture, the rule is, don't manipulate me by changing your experience to do that. Tell me your experience truly, and I will accept it as your experience without having to make it mine. We have enough in common to build cultures on without expecting every one of us to have the same reality. And nature is all about diversity. If we do human monoculture, we're done. It won't work. We need that diversity. So tell your stories true. And at the end of this talk, I'm going to go really deeper into that notion of truth-telling. So, meanwhile, every human culture has had some kind of a creation story, a world creation story to guide its people's lives, right? And they can be religious stories, scientific stories, cultural stories. It's all stories, believe me. We just get at them in different ways. How many of you have been to Malta, a Stone Age women's temple, a beautiful womb, with these big thunder-thighed goddesses in them, and the temple's on the ground looking the same way, like cellos, and the male scientists all said, wonder what that strange shape is. Early cultures understood the mother to be the creator, right? It was kind of obvious. Indigenous people everywhere knew that we're born of Mother Earth and that Earth is alive. They didn't have to be told that. Unfortunately, we got untold that. So we have in the world both creative and destructive stories of how things are. So it's very important for us to be aware of that, we have to choose our own stories. Through our experiences, we have to decide who's an authority. Who do I believe? Who don't I believe? That's creating your garden of beliefs all your life. You're going to have to weed out the ones that don't work anymore, plant new ones, really be responsible for your story of how things are. Because you don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you believe. And if we truly believe in the better world we're making, it will happen. It's a law of the cosmos. Yeah. So, a little quick history. Western culture, through the Enlightenment in Europe, and then through industrial enterprise coming into the picture, and creating secular states, we took the right to tell the creation story away from the religions and gave it to science, which was a huge responsibility for science. And how well has it met that responsibility is the question. As our Western scientists, and I call it Western science because there are other sciences on this planet. This is the newest one, the one born in Europe by the makers of machinery, who projected machinery onto the whole universe, and then looked into the past and saw a meaningless, purposeless, non-living universe running down by entropy to nothing. Wow, pretty depressing. Then along comes biology, and what does it add to physics? It says that life is a struggle in scarcity, highly competitive, trying to claw its way up this tide of decay, and eventually washed away too. Now I ask you, do you know any other human culture that's ever come up with such a depressing creation story? I don't. Wow. I mean, what happens when you tell that kind of a story in a culture? Economists took it up, and they built an economy that was driven by growth and expansion and consumption, right? So, well, how did we do it? We grew our economy by liquidating the Earth's assets, as you just heard from Liz, right? We mined the holes in the ground and strip mining and cut down the forests and everything like it was our Earth, and we decided to call nature resources for our use instead of the living Earth that we're part of. So we get a depressing story, and we get a depressing result in the sense that for all the wonders of technology we've gotten from a non-living universe view in which things were mechanical, yes, the founders of science really understood machinery. They were inventors of machinery. And they projected their ability onto God himself, saying God was the grand engineer building the machinery, inventing and building the machinery of nature. So where did that come from? From men who understood machinery. And you can easily see how heady that would have been. Wow. If the whole cosmos were machinery, we could understand and control it, right? Whoopee. That was a great idea. And indeed, what Western science is best at is technological spin-offs, but with no concern about life. Again, as Liz talked about, we didn't think about, we thought it was endless, the minerals in the earth and the air and the water and all. You know, it didn't occur to anybody we were going to run out of anything for quite a long time. So we ended up putting ourselves into the 6th great extinction on the planet, and we humans have the distinction of being the first species ever to cause one. How about that? Quite a distinction. So, where are we going? I'm an evolution biologist. Okay, I'm a deep pastist because I believe that in order to see where we can go in the future, we really need to see where we've come from. I'm also a kind of cosmic snoop. I want to know how everything works, right? So I'm insatiably curious. I drove my kids mad by asking how everything works all the time. They, why do you need to know these things? I said, how do I know? I was born that way. Oh, I very early started out with these big philosophical questions, not knowing that's what they were. I said, you know, where'd we come from? Where are we headed? By the way, that is me on the right. And at that age, I was playing under these same trees, but I took that picture of the trees when I was more closer to my age now. I'm still looking up, right? So the ancient Greeks called science philos sophias, friend of wisdom. And that idea of seeking wisdom through the study of nature, wisdom for human society, was what drove me to science. That was my purpose too. Unfortunately, I found it wasn't the purpose of all of my colleagues, and so I had to do a lot of stuff on my own. So now we get to what I'm here to talk to you about, the evolution revolution. How do we get from hostilities to harmony? That's our challenge for right now, and this is my story of how things are in the universe. So it's a story. Listen to it. I'm not going to make you believe it. I'm just going to offer it to you the way we all have to offer our stories to each other, and then everybody choose which beliefs that we're going to put into our garden of beliefs, right? Okay. So bear with me. It's my story. Who are we from an evolutionary perspective was my big question. And the answer I came to may seem a little odd, but bacteria are us. Have you all heard of Toys R Us? Who's heard of Toys R Us with the backward R? Okay. I'm going to tell you that we are bacteria, bacteria are us. So let's go back to the very early Earth. Actually, evolution has been happening in linear time, as opposed to the eternal now, for about 4 billion years. And half of that time, 2 billion years, was only bacteria. Tiny little cells forming on the surface of the big Earth cell. A big Earth cell. And these early bacteria did some amazing things. We call them archaebacteria, ancient bacteria. Now, they are the only other creatures on Earth to cause global crises. But they're technically not a species. There were all kinds of them, many kinds. In 2 billion years, they evolved many lifestyles, did lots of inventing of things, and in fact, the hunger crisis was caused when they ate up all the free food, all the sugars and acids that had formed on the surface of the Earth, and they had to figure out how to make food out of what was left, which was air, minerals, and water, and sunlight, okay? In fact, they're responsible for most of the air as we know it today. But they solved the problem by harnessing solar energy. Does that sound familiar? We call it photosynthesis. And we humans are still trying to figure out how to do it at our human level. Scientists are working on it. They've been working on it for a long time. But let me tell you, the microbial world is way more sophisticated in technology than the human world is. Your cells have had far longer to evolve than you as multi-celled creatures. What else did they do? They invented the electric motor for their more high-tech bacteria that used the oxygen that actually polluted the Earth to build new lifestyles. Their story is amazing. They're in my books. I can't go into too many details. One of my favorite inventions of ancient bacteria is the first World Wide Web. You think we invented it? DNA information is traded worldwide. Any bacterium on Earth can trade DNA with any other bacterium. Amazing, isn't it? Okay. They also evolved eventually a huge cooperative cell. Now this is important because they went through a feisty competitive youth where they expanded each kind of bacterium doing different lifestyles, and eventually they came together and formed the kind of cells you and I are made of, the nucleated cell. The only other kind of cell to exist after bacteria on the planet, And both are so functional that they both still, after 4 billion years, now, I mean, 2 billion in the case of nucleated cells, 4 billion in the case of bacteria, the whole world is still run on them. If they weren't here, we wouldn't be here even today. So this is amazing. Bacteria are much smaller than nucleated cells. The big one here should be drawn 1,000 times bigger with loads of bacteria in it. I'll tell you later, for instance, that there are 1,000 ancient bacteria now called mitochondria that are banks giving out free money in all your cells. We'll get to that in a little while. It's really an amazing thing. Now, this is really important. When a species matures enough to start cooperating, the cooperative it builds is a new entity on the planet and has to go through its own youth. So it took another 1 billion years for these big nucleated cells to do their cooperatives, which are called multicelled creatures. Those are the two biggest steps in evolution. That's not so hard to remember, right? Bacteria to nucleated cell cooperatives into multicelled creatures, which is us. So all the stuff you learned about evolution is frosting on the cake. The important thing is that. So we humans are a big brain experiment right now on the planet. And we don't know yet how it's going to come out. That's what we're here to figure out. Are we going to be a successful species or not? And it's going to depend on whether we mature out of our hostile competitive phase into the harmonious phase that you're all already living. That's why you're so important on the planet right now. You're going to make it work, this experiment. So let me go through, stage by stage, how this maturation cycle works. You start off with some unity. A mother from whom a baby is born, a planet on the surface of which bacteria package themselves as individual creature. All through evolution, this unity individuates into individual creatures. Now, when you have individual creatures, loads of them, there's tension and conflict. It's perfectly natural. It's what happens when you have a lot of individuals. And this is the Darwinian story of evolution. Unfortunately, it didn't get beyond this to the part where when it gets too energy expensive to continue the competition, negotiations begin, and slowly creatures start working out the resolution to some of these conflicts and figure out how to build cooperative schemes. And in the best case scenario, they build a whole new unity at a new higher level, a larger organism. We humans have just globalized our economy. We're talking now about a global brain through the internet. We're talking about ourselves as a superorganism, aren't we? That's the next stage in evolution. It's quite natural. So I'm very hopeful because I know this can all be done. And the important thing to remember is that the creative cooperation is the mature phase, and that it comes about when it's too energy expensive to keep fighting off your competition, and it becomes cheaper to feed your enemies than to kill them off. Simple, isn't it? Very simple, boys. So remember that line, that's the important one. The fractal biology, just to remind you, we started out making the nucleated cells out of bacteria, right? So they are actually multi-creatured cells. They go on to form multi-celled creatures, and then we get to our phase where we're building another multi-creatured superorganism. So, see, evolution isn't so hard. You don't have to remember enormous amounts of details. Just get those basics down and we'll be fine. Now, we humans have survived about a dozen ice ages. And I don't think we did that entirely by hostile competition. those beautiful paintings in Stone Age caves, I think cave women probably said, Mama Bear, will you sleep in my living room this winter and keep my kids warm? I'll keep them quiet, you keep them warm. Cooperation? Why not? We humans were communing with the animals. Do you think little naked bipeds would have survived a dozen ice ages in forests that here in Europe were full of giant mammoths, cave bears, tigers, rhinoceroses, and other stuff? I think we did it through cooperation with those beings of Earth. We had about 100,000 years of cooperative communities at the tribal level. That doesn't mean tribes never fought each other, but it was certainly cooperative within tribes, and they worked out a lot of relationships with neighboring tribes. Sometimes one would produce one thing and another, and they started to trade, and eventually they built the first cities on Earth, which we're only now digging up. In the Orkneys in northern England, in the Amazon, in the Middle East, in Africa, we're discovering that 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, tribes got together just like ancient bacteria and formed cities that have no walls around them, no weapons buried there, where they traded goods and information and worshiped together perhaps, or whatever, but they were peaceful. Now what happens when you build a peaceful cooperative? It's new on the planet, and it has to start over and go through its own youth. And what did the cities do? They went into empire building mode, the competitive mode. So that's where we are now. We've got 6,000 to 10,000 years of competitive empires ruled by emperors. Then we went into national empires, now we're in corporate empires. And we've reached the limits. It's too expensive now to have enemies, costs way too much, and it may be profitable for a few people, but it's certainly not good for the rest of us. Now, in my lifetime, the population of Earth has actually tripled. That's a lot of people very fast, because we're going around this hockey stick curve, this exponential curve where everything happens faster and faster. And that includes climate change and a lot of other things that are speeding up, and as they speed up, it's going to get very dramatic on this planet. You have incarnated at the most exciting time in human history, and we can get through this. So the curve, of course, follows the oil curve. Digging up fossil fuels permitted us to explode the populations and to get where we are today. And now we have to move into the next phase. So at present, some of us are living really well. We call them nowadays the 1%. And some of us are not living well at all. And we are doing silly things like putting ourselves in boxes like factory farmed chickens instead of being out here on the land living lightly on the earth, which seems a little bit healthier. Although some of us probably have to live in such boxes for a while yet. And many of us are moving out of the boxes into the countryside because we see that our food production is causing deserts and diseases, and we want to eat healthy, so we're going back to the land, we're doing permaculture, we're doing transition towns. Those are all the right things to do. Fires are raging around the world. The deserts are growing as the earth heats up. And I'm not going to argue with you about whether global warming is happening. I'm just going to give you this little bit of evidence that it's warming up on the planet. So, it doesn't matter whose fault it is, people, it's happening and we don't know how to stop it. As much as we have interesting technologies, we do not have a technology strong enough to get the earth to stop heating up. And it's very easy to argue this with people. You don't need any numbers. Would you agree that the hotter it gets, the more ice will melt? Yeah, okay. The more ice that melts makes it hotter? Okay, that's called a positive feedback loop. The ice melts and causes the heat causes more ice to melt, and that's a runaway positive feedback loop. and we have no way to stop it. The few things we've tried have really bombed, like particles out of airplanes have fallen down and killed soil microbes, metal particles spread over the ocean have killed the plankton. You know, we don't understand life very well, and interfering with this process is not a good idea. We need to get with the process and adapt. There are as many people today living in deserts already as there are people in Europe. It's a lot of people. And people have lived in deserts comfortably for thousands of years. I went to Morocco just to study the low-tech solutions to living in deserts. It's not so hard, but we're going to have to work together. Now, these shifting wind belts around the Earth, which were closer to the poles, because there's 40% more moisture in the atmosphere than normal, those have gotten heavy, have moved closer to the equator and are dumping all that evaporated ice. It's already 40% thinner. They're dumping it on latitudes lower than used to have it. So you'll hear a lot of people saying, what global warming? Look at the snow in Washington, D.C., and then the floods in England and all that. It's cold all winter. That's because the ice has been transferred there, and we don't know how to transfer it back. So watch. I've always said we'll have a mini ice age on the way to the hot age because of the global warming. So here we go. We're dumping evaporated polar ice in new latitudes. And once we understand that, and once we understand exponential curves, we'll see that all of these things are happening like popcorn effect, faster and faster as the curve goes up. And it seems to me that we're somehow afraid of ourselves, and so we go into denial over these things. And so we've got all of these things happening at once. Terrorism, overpopulation, natural disasters. What do we do now, right? Well, that's the way it is when you bring up a perfect storm of crises. But nature's way of dealing with crises is usually when you get the biggest leaps in evolution. These are the secrets. These are the evolution revolution secrets. That you can grow up by feeding your enemies instead of killing them. That you can see how natural disasters can become opportunities for evolution. Are we going to face civilizational collapse? Or are we going to do something different? If you stand on the moon and watch humans over time, what you will discover is that the only effect humans have that you can see from there over time is expanded deserts. We're a desert-making species. We were supposed to be going into an ice age right now, but poor Mother Earth had to say, oh dear, you want more deserts? You keep on cutting the rainforests and destroying the grasslands. You want it hot? Okay, darlings. We'll do the other thing. We'll go into a hot age. She's done it before. You know, it's not going to destroy the planet, and it doesn't have to destroy us. But we're going to have to get serious and adapt. So we can do it. It wouldn't be very intelligent of us to destroy our planet, right? I mean, what would aliens think of us if they were watching us? Western science had no intelligence or purpose or creativity in its reality. We tell kids, that's only your imagination, right? Well, we need a lot of imagination now. We need a lot of that. That's what's going to get us through, is our wonderful resource of our human brains. And I saw the story I was taught by science as depressing. It looked much more to me like this was a living universe, a living Earth, that the universe is friendly, as Einstein said, and hey, intelligent, loving. So what if this is all a whole other story, a story of evolution as an intelligent improvisational dance? Go dance that tomorrow. Dance that creative, intelligent, evolutionary dance. That's what it's about, doing it together. So with our Earth, in this new story, just as alive as the creatures of Earth. And when you see that life is simply too intelligent to evolve by the accidents that Western science tells you. These creatures look to me like they're saying, what? Us accidental? I don't think so. So, after every previous extinction, batches of new species, whole new ecosystems evolved under the pressure of the previous crises, storms. So crisis can be the way that we get pushed into our maturation, into our cooperation. All ecosystems are cooperative when they're mature. Only immature pioneer ecosystems behave like youthful creatures. So nature shows us the way. And interestingly, she's profoundly conservative with the things that work well, and radically creative when things don't work. So it's strange that we have these two-party system democracy. We call it a democracy. We pit two parties against each other antagonistically. One is supposed to be conservative, the other one is supposed to be radical, and instead they should be cooperative so that you divide the labor and say, here's the things we need to protect. Let the conservatives do that. That's what they're good at. Here's the things we need to change. Let the radicals do that, because we need that too. This is what we have to figure out, that it's cooperation. Right now, the 1% totally manipulates democracies that vote by pitting the parties against each other over less consequential issues than the survival of humanity, which is what we should be talking about, right? So Western science totally rejected all these inner ways of knowing, this conscious universe, just wasn't part of it. And yet, our most basic experience on this planet is what? It's your experience that you're always in your consciousness. All your reality is created within your consciousness. On top of that, all of it is always happening now. You've never been outside of now, right? Isn't it strange that Western science could completely ignore these two very basic facts about human existence? That consciousness is primary and that it's always now? Interesting that they managed just to ignore all that. But lots of indigenous cultures live very easily in the two thing. They understand the eternal now and the convenience of linear time in a physical world. If we didn't have linear time, we wouldn't be here at 7 o'clock to hear this talk, right? It's very practical in a physical world to have clocks. So we have to learn to accept these opposites and to work with both of them rather than choosing one or the other. Cosmic consciousness, Brahman, the great I am, all that is, and we as human consciousnesses within that sea of consciousness, each of us an absolutely unique perspective on the whole of the universe with no boundaries to our mind, all the way up to the I am, which is why you can get all that inner knowledge through meditation, right? And through intuition. So if everything, physicists even agree that everything is vibrations. So I would say that if you see all the vibrations of the universe as cosmic consciousness, and then look at the different vibrations, look at the frequencies, and notice that the low keys give you matter. Why? Because cosmic consciousness has slowed itself down into electromagnetic energy and then further slowed itself down into the material world. And our physicists, starting at the low end of the keyboard, are now up to the 0-point energy, but not to the consciousness, except for relatively few of them. The spiritual people have been standing at the other end of the keyboard, looking down it. And now, what does it mean to bring spirit and science together? Recognize we're all on the same keyboard. Again, it's really rather simple when you see it that way. We have pretended that those are two completely different realities, but there's only one. So, We traded, in evolution, we traded our inner knowing. Animals know what to do because they're communing with each other, all species together in the same field, knowing what each other are doing. And we decided that we were going to not pay attention to our inner knowing and instead give ourselves the freedom of choice what to do. So while animals know how to mate, find mates and build houses and govern themselves and stuff, we have to do it by choice. And that's a fascinating thing in evolution, but we have to make sure that we make our choices well. What if we, don't do too well in making these choices? Oh, we got to look at that, don't we? How my butterfly isn't taking off. That's interesting. There he goes. Okay. Sometimes different computers work differently. So would aliens consider us intelligent? They're watching us right now. I think it's iffy. So let me look quickly at our amazing bodies so that you can see why a human body made of 100 trillion cells is a pretty good economic model. Each one of these 100 trillion cells is as complex as a large human city. Amazing. Don't be caught up by smaller things or simple, because you all know about fractals. You know about flying through the cosmos, seeing a dot, it's a whole galaxy. You see a dot in that, it's a whole star system. It goes like that, right? Equal complexity at different size levels. We can understand that now, and that's an important concept when you're looking at your own body, because our cells have had much more time to evolve than their union as a body. Every cell in your body has about 30,000 recycling centers keeping your proteins healthy. And you know how high-tech they are? They're like a chipper machine that you put a dead tree into and a live tree comes out the other end. That's the technology at the micro level in your own body. And 1,000 banks are giving out free stored value debit cards. You go to the mitochondrial bank, you get it, you spend it into the economy because the money is just there to grease the economy. It's ATP, the currency, for those of you who know the science. And this card is stripped of its energy by making all these transactions work. And then you take it back to the bank and they reload it with a new debit line so that you can spend more. You never pay it back. There's no interest. And the bank's role is just to regulate how much is circulating to make sure there's neither too little nor too much, not inflation, not deflation. It's really a very amazing system. Stored value debit cards that don't have to be repaid. So alternative currencies are a very good way to go, but debt money has got to disappear. Now, if you want to make a better world, the easiest way is just don't do the stupid things your elders did. Don't do debt money anymore. You don't have to fight the banks. Just make your own alternative currencies and get out of the loop, right? It's not so hard. Don't make war anymore. Don't do racism. Here's how nature does economics. Say it with me, Hafiz. Even after all this time, the sun never once says to Earth, "Earth, you owe me." Look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole sky. Simple. Simple. What if your body's economy was running the way we run our global economy? Good question. Let's call the heart-lung system the northern industrial organs, north of the diaphragm. They can exploit the bone marrow mines all over the body for raw material blood cells that are then swept up to this northern industrial part of the body. And there, what happens? The lungs purify the blood, the heart is going to distribute it, and it announces to the world about, to the body, this useful product. Suppose the heart distribution center said, "The body price for blood today is so much, who wants to buy some?" And you find that some of those poor bones that made the cells in the first place and their marrow can't afford it, how long would you last? How long would we stay healthy? Can our world operate differently from a healthy living system? I don't think so. That's why Thomas Berry said you can't tell the human story without telling the Earth story. You've got to know what life is about. And Western science was so good at technology and not very good at biology. And yet biology has the most sophisticated materials on the planet. We think we need all this machinery, but how come bats and dolphins can do sonar and radar? And, you know, there's an awful lot of wonderful technology at the micro level and at the macro level in nature that we haven't really, we've copied it, but not nearly as sophisticated ways as nature itself has. So remember that your cells are embedded within organ systems, within the body in a family, in an ecosystem, a community, a world, all the way up to the cosmos. These are holarchies. And at every level, the holarchy has to be healthy. You cannot have an organ be healthy at the expense of its cells, right? It won't work. You can't have a body healthy at the expense of its own organs. And your heart doesn't tell your liver to be another heart. The diversity is respected. If there's a problem in your body, aid goes to the damaged part and no one complains. It's really an incredibly good economy. Every level of holarchy has to negotiate its self-interest, not selfishly, because then you get cancer, but self-interest. The cell must be healthy, the organ must be healthy, the whole body must be healthy. Woo, this is getting a little bit difficult to hear. Anyway, the sun is setting. The sun is setting now on the age of empire. We're moving into global family. The hallmarks of empire are this youthful competition, the control, the mine and yours, the monocultures, the fear and scarcity. Those are the things we're going to let go in favor of mature cooperation, the messiness and mystery. We don't have to know everything. We can do we ours instead of mine yours. We can do the diversity, the creativity, and the love in abundance. That's what it's about, and we can adapt to life in a hot age. We'll have too much water in the ocean, not enough on land. I tell oil companies your future is in water. You know, you're going to desalinate, move water around, or let them die and we'll do it if they don't want to. That's okay. Solutions abound. The Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. You know, we were smart enough to think up other things to do, other ways to create things, right? So now it's our turn. There's already over $3 trillion invested in green businesses. That's in the right direction. We know that organic agriculture is healthy and restores soils and water and outperforms high-tech agriculture. I grew up as a child in a barter economy, no exchange of money. Every farm was doing something different. One had chickens and eggs, one had a cow for our family. We made butter, racing how fast we could shake it in jars. And, you know, another one had cider and all the fruits and bees, and my mother grew vegetables. And we didn't have the word organic because there wasn't anything that wasn't organic. So we have to reclaim that. And the UN actually issued a report a couple of years ago saying the only way to feed the world was through small farms using natural methods. So there you go. Young people on the internet, as far as I can see, very few of them show much interest in racism and warfare and greed. It's a different world, and a single generation can create a new world by not continuing the things we've been doing. We can have peaceful revolution. The evolution revolution is not about war. So I want to tell you one story before I finish. I hope we'll have a couple of minutes to talk. When I lived many years in Greece. I'm a Greek citizen as well as a US citizen. And I wondered why it was that the Minoans invented writing and didn't put their songs and stories into writing. And I made up a story to explain this to myself, because the fact is that all human cultures that invented writing first used it for accounting, like temple inventories, then used it for law, governance, and lastly used it for their songs and stories. So I imagined that there was a round table of the Minoan elders and the young techies at the table, and the young techies are saying, this phenomenal new technology is going to be great. We can preserve our songs and stories in this new technology so that people in the far future will still know our songs and stories. And the old people say, you want to do what? You want to reduce our songs and stories to chicken scratches on clay? Where's the feeling? Where's the color? Where's the music? It's impossible. And they said, no, nixed it. Okay, I made up that story. But I remembered it one day when I was deploring the fact that young people were ruining the language through texting, stripping it down, and putting all these silly little faces in their messages instead. And then I said, oh my goddess, the first alphabet in human history for feelings. What happens when you text somebody on the other side of the world about your rage or your jealousy or whatever? They resonate to you. I believe that's called scalar waves. They're on your wavelength. They know instantly from that symbol how you feel, and they feel it in their body. And that sets up an internet that's growing as fast as the internet. It is communion rather than communication. You are reclaiming a birthright to commune with each other. And my guru, whose name is J. Allen Boone, wrote 4 books. The one that's easiest to find is called Kinship with All Life. A dog, the first movie star dog in Hollywood, taught him deep communion to the point where he said we could have deep philosophical conversations every day, not as a man and a dog talking to each other, as the universe talking us to each other. It may not be a problem to simplify the verbal language at the moment, to balance it with the feelings. You can always restore it later if you want, to write novels again. But right now, I'm seeing that as a step in evolution where you develop the internet we need, because no one can control that. The way to go now is, we call it telepathy. It's a poor word for it. Communion is better. But this kind of communion is transparent. You cannot lie. You cannot deceive. And what's happening in our culture now is that, remember when Enron went bust because they were cheating and lying? And then we got Catholic priests, secrecy again. Then we got WikiLeaks bringing things out of secrecy. This is the important part of evolution, that we are moving into transparency, moving into radical honesty. The secrecy in this world has permitted the deception that permitted 1% of the world to loot our commons in their favor and even convince us that it was okay, that they were going to, I don't know, trickle down the wealth or whatever. That never happened. So be radically honest and go for open source everything. My new Bible is Robert David Steele's The Open Source Everything Manifesto. How many of you have heard of it? You have now. He's an ex-CIA spy who set up the U.S. Marine Intelligence Service, figured out that all the secret intelligence gathering in the world was getting no useful information. They were completely ignoring all the free and open information in the world that would have served them much better. And he's saying we need to have a world in which every man, woman, and child has access to every bit of human knowledge we generate. Every man, woman, and child has to have access to all the technology we develop. And I say, I know you don't all want to grow veggies. You can do technology, just don't put any toxins in it and make it 100% recyclable. Then go for it. You're smart people. Our greatest resource is our minds. And we can build a better world on truth, transparency, and trust, on caring and sharing. And that's what I want to leave you with. We can be Homo sapiens if we see ourselves as spirit choosing our human experience. And it's our evolutionary mandate to create sustainable economies in caring, sharing community in a mature global family. That, by the way, is my Puma Kid's son, so it's my grandbaby. He's actually about 7 now, but I can't let go of that wonderful picture. So here we go. Tell new stories for a new world and live them in love. And remember that transparency is trust. We're going to get rid of that deception, bring it all out into the open. And as Rumi said, whoops, why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open? Thank you.
So some questions for Elisabet?
Yes, thank you. So you were talking about
Hope I didn't drive you too crazy moving around.
Yeah. So first you start off with basic, organic molecules, and you get more complexity, more first basic bacteria, and then they get more complex bacteria and first cells. Now my cells consist of a trillion cells actually, and now the, humanity is becoming one. So maybe one gigantic Earth cell, and maybe then the part of humanity is like we are the seed of this plant, which is Earth, and we maybe then produce starships and then go to other planets and then make them alive, and then maybe the role of humanity is to spread life through the universe, and then it's a part in a bigger process. How do you see that?
If we grow up, we have to grow up first and clean up our own planet. I'm going to be on the Galactic Council in a few years. I'm not going to let you have a new planet until we clean up this one. That's fine. If you get it right here, the cosmos will be happy to hear from you. Huh? Yeah, from us. Anybody else?
Yes, thank you for a very inspirational and informative presentation. Where do you think the gap is between where we are now with our mindset and the next step to be able to let go of that selfish, mean mentality?
There is no gap. The new world is already being lived. You are part of it. You are like imaginal cells in a caterpillar. You're building a butterfly as the caterpillar disintegrates. The caterpillar is a wonderful metaphor for the old world. It eats 300 times its weight in a single day. It gets so bloated it hangs itself up and goes to sleep because it's about all it can do. And then the little imaginal cells come out of the folds of skin of that caterpillar where they've been hiding all its life and start building a butterfly. So it's not about we burn it all to ashes and then the phoenix rises. We are the imaginal cells already building the new world. So you don't have to put any energy into destroying the old world. It's doing very well on its own. The banks will implode. You don't need to worry about that. But you do need to worry about moving uphill if you're at sea level and building what we have left of fossil fuels, using it entirely to build infrastructure for clean green energy, because we don't have enough solar and wind yet to build the windmills and collectors. So we have to be very smart about the transition. Otherwise, we're going to be kicked back into the Stone Age. Now, we can do that. In China, in the early 70s, the United States was threatening to bomb China back into the Stone Age. And I visited in 1974, a real rare privilege to go to China at that time, with a group called Science for the People. There was a valley with hundreds of villages in total drought, and they had no resources, The old people were drinking kerosene so that they wouldn't use up any more water to take themselves out. And the young people proposed bringing water from a river 70 kilometers across a mountain range. They proposed this to the government. The government sent out engineers. The engineers trekked them out and said flat out, impossible, don't do it. As soon as the engineers went away, the kids started smelting iron out of the dry red earth of their valley floor, made hammers, chisels, pickaxes, and shovels. They'd been taught to do that, to be that self-sufficient in China in case we did bomb them back into the Stone Age. And they made homemade ropes. They swung from the cliffs, these barren cliffs, with pickaxes to cut the first tracks in. I interviewed the Iron Girls dynamite team who blasted tunnels through the mountains with homemade dynamite. And in 8 years or so, they brought that water across and into the valley. And meanwhile, somebody went to a county school to find out how to build a generator, and every time that water fell 3 feet, they put a little generator on it. They electrified the valley. If you Google Red Flag Canal today, you will see that mountainside lush and green, and tourist hotels bringing people to see this wonder of the modern world that was done purely by motivation. No money, no resources, just motivation. They had to do it. That's why I changed my whole view of economics with that. It isn't money, it's motivation. If you're motivated enough, you'll start doing it with other people. And as you believe in yourselves in doing it, the resources will come to you. It's already happening.
Hiya.
Hello.
Really appreciate what you had to say. Thank you very much. And I was just wondering if I could share with you some thoughts that I wrote down that were inspired by what you shared, if that's okay.
Yes, okay.
So I wrote, always remember your gift of life is now. Your loving universe's opportunity for you to be loving, happy, light, joyous is a sacred opportunity now. We don't know when our bodies will die, so don't miss this opportunity and don't allow working environments to manipulate you into being an unjoyous robot. Share light, share joy, share happiness, smile, enjoy, participate. Befriend everyone, support everyone, be kind, be still and at peace with the blissful love that you truly are. You are a sacred, innocent child. Really value yourself and love yourself. Why not? You can do anything with while you are here. And I am here to help you and be helped by you. As we are one body, we are one evolving mind, and we can become one loving entity. Anyone right now can listen, think, intuitively feel who they truly are and what they want to be in their heart, and choose love and turn their lives around in a life dedicated in the movement of healing, enjoyment, lightness, and unity, inclusion, friendliness, and family. I can do this, you can do this, we can do this, and the key word is together, as this is a together project. This is a shared experience. We are interdependent. This is the divine, beautiful truth. All of life existing, co-inhabiting, co-nourishing and sustaining now. In a word, love. The truth is, see me in everything. In that way, support, sustain and care for all life, as truly all of life is who we are.
Thank you. I'm reminded of the Dalai Lama before he really learned English, and a translator he had written out his talk and they translated it, and then when he didn't know a word, they helped him out with the English, and he said, "Did I say that?" So thank you. Thank you for mirroring. That's what we have to do with each other. We have mirror neurons. We can mirror each other and support each other. Thank you. And make sure that whatever you do makes your heart sing. You were meant to have fun, and we're not here to try to make other people do things. We're here to seduce each other into the ecstasy of forming true community. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not the woman exactly, but...
Well, you know, the Iroquois had a law that if anybody wanted to propose war, If a man wanted to propose war, he had to put on a skirt and carry a corn grinding bowl. And as a result, they never had a war in 1,000 years. Go ahead.
So I hope I can ask the question.
Bring out your feminine and talk.
Okay, yeah, perhaps. Thank you, very inspiring lecture. I was wondering, you were talking about transparency, and I think in principle that is a good thing. But what happens then with privacy? How far should the transparency go? Should we all be transparent? And should we give up our privacy, which I think is a very important protective environment to grow as a human being? So I see a danger there, or a dichotomy between privacy and transparency.
I didn't say you had to build glass houses and live in them. I mean that your mind should be transparent so that you would let anyone walk through it.
Okay, so
are you thinking thoughts that you wouldn't want anyone to know about? Why?
Yes, certainly. And I think that's exactly where privacy comes in, because you need that to develop as a person.
Do you?
It's the individuality style.
There have been cultures on the planet where people did do communion, did have that transparency with each other. Look up a book called Amazon Beaming, the Mayaruna culture of the Amazon. They didn't have any secrets from each other. They didn't require more privacy than, it wasn't, they didn't all have sex out in the open and stuff like that. I mean, what do you mean by privacy? You can go off into the woods and think alone. You can have walls around your house, but mentally, can you be open to each other? In case this internet grows, it's going to happen anyway. So I think it's good practice for us to be aware of the thoughts that we would not like others to know, and see if we can do better.
Of course, yeah, I certainly disagree, or agree with you on that point, certainly. But in that sense, transparency can also be very dangerous, because it can be manipulated by people who are able to disform information and pretend something to be transparent. Well, in a certain way, it's just a particular interpretation.
Yes, what you're saying is we're living in a world where we don't have transparency, and where deception has been the name of the game that has gotten us where we are today. The reason the 1% has looted the commons of the 99% is because they used deception. They weren't transparent. So, first of all, you don't have to agree with everything I said. As I said, this is my story. But to what extent can we start being radically honest with each other in our personal relationships and stuff? We know we already are transparent to the government. We're listening to all your phone calls. Your most intimate phone calls are already accessible to the 1%. So what are you going to do with that? Are you going to try to hide from them, or are you going to start being so radically honest that everyone will support you if you're put in jail or something like that? You know, the way we ended the draft in the 60s was that all the young men burned their draft cards and they didn't have enough jails for them. It takes community, the supportive community, that starts practicing radical honesty as far as possible. I'm not asking you to do it 100% now, okay?
Okay, thank you for your...
Be aware, be aware.
Okay, thank you, Elisabet. We can close with another round of applauses for Elisabet. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.